toasting, joking too. Sipping and roasting is what we do. Light 'em up, drink 'em down. Whiskey and cigars all around. Cheers, y'all.
Well. Welcome, my friends, ladies and gentlemen, to this fine little radio program called Smokin' and Toastin'. It is show number 106 today, and we are so thrilled to have you here. We are brought to you in part by B&B Butchers and Restaurant at 1814 Washington Ave in Houston, and in the shops at Clear Fork in Fort Worth. And I have a great idea for you if you're going to B&B, which you should because the food's fantastic. Go in, eat the meal, tip well, but at the end, lean over to your waiter and say, "Can you pass on a complaint about Jeremiah?" And just and then just make up something totally ridiculous. And then, we just want to see if he's as invincible a bar manager as we think he is. Now, I don't really want you to do that. He's our buddy there, and he's although he is a difficult guy to reach on the phone sometimes, he's one of our dearest friends. Speaking of dearest friends, we have maybe, if they're not our two favorite guests, they're definitely like two of the top three.
Right,
and they've
been on the show more than almost everybody.
Yeah, which I understand there's a thing going on about that. But please welcome to Smokin' and Toastin', show number 106, Mr. Alan Denney. Alan, how are you?
I am doing great. Thank you all for having me back.
And our regular guest and friend, Chris Hart.
Hey guys, glad to be back.
How are you?
As your number one guest of all time.
Okay, so
there it is.
There it is. Yes, it didn't take long to get to this.
I didn't give myself that title for the record. It was bestowed upon me. It was earned. For, you know what earnings like, don't you?
Yeah, I have a job.
Wait. Do you guys know each
4.
other?
Yeah,
that's not my fault.
So what this is about, apparently, is about who's been on the show the most times, right?
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
And could you fill me in on where it sits exactly?
Well, this is my 4th show and 1 call-in.
Right.
And so I was
Collins,
super.
I'm sorry. Just for the record, Collins don't count.
Right, and we actually talked about this earlier.
If Collins count, then the number of times that they shout out to me while on air counts. Shout outs matter more.
Yeah, but then you're going to add 10 extra because you had them on your show. So
right. So Alan, whenever you do a show, we'd be happy to be on that too.
Adam, let's get this started.
All right. So we got a lot to go over this week now. We're not going to get into this in this segment, but one of the things we want to revisit is something that's been going on. It's kind of like been playing volleyball between our two shows, between the Whiskey and Eat show with Chris and Smokin' and Toastin', is our ongoing comments and what they all mean regarding Nat Sherman and their parent company and the whole cigar legislation, where that sits, what it means. And so we'll get in. I don't want to get into it yet because, just in case it takes a really bad turn.
Just in case it looks like that scene from West Side Story.
Exactly. I want it to be later in the show so that first we can enjoy some whiskey and beers and what have you. So anyway, there's a lot going on. There is new news on the legislation front. We'll pass that along to you a little bit later on in the show. Archaeologists have unearthed a 13,000-year-old brewery in Israel, maybe the oldest brewery ever discovered. So we'll have that story coming up for you. And we have just amazing things to taste. And one of the things I love about having Chris on the show, and maybe this is one of the reasons that he's been invited back so many times, is when he gets here, he just wheels in his cart of whiskey and just starts setting them up on the table.
I'm not above buying someone's love. Ask my kids and wife.
Hey, if it works, it works, right? And we got some great beers to taste. We're going to get to an Octoberfest. Now, Ian was almost late for the show today because as I was preparing things, I looked in my refrigerator because I thought I had set us aside. We like to taste an Octoberfest every week, during this season of the year. And I thought I had one in my refrigerator that we had not yet tasted on the show. Found out I was wrong. Stopped somewhere on the way to try to find one, and they didn't have it. So I had to call Ian and go, dude, you gotta rescue me and get us an Oktoberfest. So Ian, of course, rises to the challenge, drives across town, picks up an Oktoberfest, buys a cooler and ice to get it here. And when he gets here, I tell him that I've discovered we actually had an Oktoberfest.
Yeah, he just happened to be sipping on an Oktoberfest
that was
here.
in the refrigerator here at the studio. We could totally have tasted this one, but you went out and got one. What did you get, Ian?
I got the Iinger Oktoberfest, and that makes me happy. I like everything from Iinger. Actually.
Yeah. They've got a certain level.
And
of quality
I am
that
actually
you can
drinking one
expect.
right now to sample, but we'll talk about it
Okay,
when we get
we'll
to
talk about it in a few minutes. Yeah, one of the things that we have to talk about is that we're going to normally on this part of the show. This is where I will ask Ian, unless we're out somewhere live where we can smoke, I'll ask Ian if he's smoked anything interesting lately, and then he'll proceed to tell me about a cigar that usually I have no idea what it will be until he shows up, and there's one I smoked, and then he'll ask me the same question. But this week we coordinated it, and it was largely because Ian was kind enough to gift me with a Cuban Partagas. And I accepted his gift and thanked him wholeheartedly. And we decided to both smoke it independently and compare notes. So,
Which one?
The Partagas Series D number 4.
One of the best Cuban.
Serie
in
D is
my
amazing.
opinion,
Yeah.
You just
made.
blew it. Now I don't even have to talk about it.
Okay.
Serie D is amazing. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's hear from you, Ian, because I want to know what you thought of this.
I'll tell you what I thought. I'll give you a blow by blow on the quick, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So I bought half a box. Me and a buddy of mine split a box of these. And
And before anybody jumps up and down, this is not an illegal thing to do anymore.
generally not, no.
Generally, yeah. As long as you hit certain parameters
right.
and guidelines, yes.
So anyway, this is like the third one I've smoked, and me and my buddy that split this box, he said some of them have been a little inconsistent, but he's been pretty happy with the ones so far. So I'm interested to see yours and my opinions on them individually. I got, on the pre-light sniff, I got earth, leather, dank hay. Pre-light draw, I had earth, tangy spice, little barnyard kind of hay, kind of.
And you managed to work the word dank in, so
I know.
point
I do
to
that
you.
every chance
Point,
I get. Yes.
Point to you.
Yes. So later on in the show, I'm going to use the word cowapidges, but wait for it.
Okay.
All right, so
Double points.
right, the initial light, it's so interesting because it's got this sweet, creamy, and light pepper flavor, and then this cigar to me is just all toast.
Yeah.
Like delicious, wonderful toast. The first third of this cigar is more toast. It's smoother than you'd even think. The cigar itself is actually really pretty. It's not amazing looking, but it's a really pretty cigar.
Yeah.
It's a light tan.
It looks like a Cuban.
Yeah, it looks
Yeah.
like exactly like you'd expect a Cuban to. So the first third was really smooth, very much toast. I put toast down twice. Toast.
Mm-hmm.
It has a butteriness to it that I really truly enjoy, and a little bit of pepper spice on the back end that is just enough to make it interesting. Then I go into the second third of this. It gets more sweetness now. Like a little bit of that sweet happened when you first light it, then it backs off. Now in the second third of this, you get that buttery, sweet, smooth pepper spice, toast, a little bit of hay coming in. And that leads into the last third of this, where it's interesting because it does everything it's been doing but picks up little hints of chocolate or even mocha on the tail end with that pepper spice and everything. It's a beautiful ride from beginning to end. I almost burned my fingers on this thing. I've smoked them so far. Out of the 3 I've smoked, I've had to tend one of them one time. I gave one away and it was having a little trouble lighting, but out of the 3 I smoked, I hadn't had any issues except for tending it once. I think I have $8 in each one of these cigars. So I'm going to actually rate this one at probably a 6.5 or a 7.
Now, you say $8. Is that, did you get like a really great deal, or is that about
They're
the right retail?
not that expensive,
Okay.
actually.
Because I didn't know what these retail for.
Yeah. So my buddy gets them on an auction. I think an auction site. I can't remember exactly.
On the dark web.
On the dark web, right? But I guess he got a price break after spending X amount and not had to pay shipping. So we got about $8 to $9 in each one of these. And man, that makes it 6.5 to 7 easy on these cigars. They're fantastic.
All right.
So I'd like to hear what you think about it.
Well, let me just preface this by saying that the last time Ian did, kind of set something up on the show, that I wound up with a mouthful of Malort. And
That's not a euphemism. That's actually a mouthful of
It was
Malort.
actually a mouthful of Malort. And I remember like kind of looking at Ian across the studio trying to figure out, okay, is this like is this just something and I don't get it? Like, is it? But anyway, it was terrible, and that's what Malort's supposed to be.
You have been malorted, and
Right.
apparently I've lost,
Right.
some trust.
Well, let's put it this way: we at least were able to establish that malorted is now, in fact, a term. It's
Adjective,
something,
right?
Yeah. It's an adjective. Yes,
Adjective, sorry.
Adjective.
I know
Yes,
the mics
thank you.
aren't that far.
So I will tell you as a preface to my review that I was concerned that I was being malorted.
You thought it was a setup?
Yeah, thought it might
Could've
be.
been.
Thought it might be, and I'll tell you why. First of all, it's a really nice looking cigar in exactly the way that Ian described it. It's sort of a Cuban looking, the right sort of reddish brown thing. But as a person who's had a few fake Cubans before, and then wondering, is it even possible to take a real Cuban band and slip it around something else? My malordable friend over here, I never know what he's up
Apparently,
to.
there's trust issues now. You see what I've done?
I never know what he's up to. So I'll start out by saying that even though it was really nice looking, it felt a little soft or underfilled to the touch. And I'm not that picky about that as long as it doesn't impact burn, but sometimes that can make it burn too fast and too hot, right? So then I light it up, and it's actually kind of the opposite. It had draw issues. Like I wasn't getting a lot of smoke, and it was a very uneven burn off the bat. It needed it did straighten out. The burn straightened out as it went, but it still needed touch-ups the entire time that I smoked it, because it would smoke. I forget what you call this, but it's when the cigar smokes the tobacco through the middle, but the wrapper kind of keeps going out.
Tunneling.
Is that tunneling? Okay, because I always think of tunneling as what's actually called canoeing, but I always think of that as tunneling, but this is tunneling. So it was tunneling on me. It seemed a little underfilled, but I was struggling with the draw. It did, after the first third, finally begin to develop some complexity. I got, as you said, a lot of toastiness. I got a little bit of leather, some nuttiness in there. I wound up enjoying it overall, but I'll just say this, it wasn't even the best cigar I smoked that day. And so overall, it was good, but it was, for me, a reminder that just because the stick is Cuban doesn't mean it's the best.
Right.
And now, interestingly enough, Alan, the first thing you said when we said what cigar this was that, that's one of your favorites. So I'm wondering if maybe I just got one that wasn't rolled well, and that impacted everything.
I also did say that there were some consistency issues, apparently,
Right.
because although the three I smoked were all smoked pretty well, I gave one to Cody that was on the show last week, and he had issues keeping his lit. And then my buddy that we split the cigars with had issues with one of them, and he said it tasted off and didn't burn right, those kind of things. So apparently you got one of those. I will lay one more on you and see what happens.
Okay, so you're working on rebuilding that trust, and I appreciate that. No, honestly, I did think at one point in the first third. Now I managed to talk myself out of this when the cigar began to show some complexity. But in the first third, I thought, is this like a quorum? But Ian slipped a Partagas Serie D band on it. I would not put it past this man, is all I'm saying.
Wow.
Yeah. And then he wants me to come on the show. This is what I thought. See, you wondered if I would come on the show and go, oh, it was great. It was the most awesome thing because it was a Cuban, like it was a setup. Right.
Well,
yeah.
First off, you wouldn't be able to be set up like that because you would know if the cigar is not good. Come on.
It's been well known in the industry that for the last couple of years, probably over the last 5 years, that Cuban cigars are not what they used to be. The quality, the tobacco,
that said,
the construction. When they're good,
they're
as good as anything else out on the market.
Totally agree.
But just to give you an idea, so Ernesto's in Germany right now, which is the largest show. We have IPCPR here for the United States, but the world show is in Germany. There's been a shift in Europe where 3 years ago it was 75% Cubans in Germany, Spain,
and 25 everything else.
25 everything else. That has shifted.
Wow.
And now it's 25-30% Cuban and 70-75% everything else.
Well, and I hear it all the time too. Oh, you're into cigars. Cubans are like the best, right?
No, they're not.
Well,
That's like
Cubans
when people
make
say
bad
Pappy's the
cigars
best.
too.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
can be, right?
Yeah.
They can be, but not necessarily.
I will tell you, one of the best things about the cigar that y'all are talking about, along with Hoya de Monterrey Epicure number 4, and a couple of others.
Got a box of those coming.
Great cigar. You don't have to worry about them being faked. They're in that $7, $8, $9 price range.
Right.
People aren't faking those.
Nobody
People are
fakes
going
them.
out and faking the Monte
$30,
Cristo number 2s that started
$40.
around 14 and going up to the, the Behikes they're running $100
Right.
now a stick. Those are the ones that you got to worry about. The fakes, on the beaches in Mexico.
Right.
The
Exactly.
$7, $8 cigars, they're pretty much legit.
People aren't going to fake those because they fake the ones that have a larger profitability. So,
Right.
yeah, that makes sense. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back, and when we do, we have so much to talk about. We want to talk about the whole legislation and Nat Sherman thing. We also have a lot of beers and a lot of whiskey to taste on the show today, so we want to get to that right away. In fact, Ian, maybe you can get ready to pour some Octoberfest, and we'll start there.
Oh, sure, I can make that happen.
Our guest today, Kristopher Hart from the Whiskey Neat show and from Houston Bourbon Society and from the Houston Whiskey Social.
He's wearing a lot of hats.
Yeah, he does. And we also have Alan Denney from EP Carrillo. We want to talk about the Whiskey Sniff. That's all coming up. It's Smoking and Toasting. Thank you for joining us. And it's show number 106.
What's the price on Whiskey Sniff?
About 25. Oh, cool. Yeah, I want to talk about that cigar too.
I had to put some food in me because every time I come on here, I leave feeling a little woozy. Ready, set, launch.
Welcome back, my friends. This is Smoking and Toasting, show number 106. We are brought to you by B&B Butchers and Restaurant at 1814 Washington Ave in Houston and in the shops at Clear Fork in Fort Worth. And B&B is the location for the very first Smoking and Toasting event, and we're so excited about this. It is the Whiskey Sniff, and it is going to be taking place on October the 10th. It's a Wednesday evening in the upstairs, what I call the smoking lounge, but it's really an upstairs patio with a great view of downtown Houston. And it's a great place to do this. B&B will be providing all kinds of food, including their world-famous bacon, which you must try if you haven't. I mean, it's worth going just for the bacon alone. But
they'll be passing it around.
Yes. So what'll happen when you come in, you will be given a little bag with some cigars in it, and then you will be kind of given the finer points of the Whiskey Sniff, which is a little program that Ian came up with for trying to pair his whiskeys with his cigars, and it does work for other spirits, and there will be other spirits there, other spirits available. But it's going to be, we have a Balvenie and Glenfiddich and Tullamore Dew, Fistful. A bourbon is going to be there this week. Jason from Yellow Rose Distilling let me know he is dropping off for us a bottle of, and he didn't really go into what it was, but he said extremely rare and very limited something from Yellow Rose Distilling. So I'm really excited to see what that is, be able to taste it. But there's going to be more whiskeys than you can possibly taste for this, and a full table with rums and some Patron, the Patron Añejo that we tasted on the 100th show. That was so fantastic. It'll all be there for sniffing and enjoying with your cigars. And there'll be several cigars in the bag, so you'll be able to, maybe smoke one or two while you're there, take the rest home. And we're really excited about this because the first 50 tickets purchased, and I don't even know where the ticket count is, so I don't know if you can still get in on this or not, but it's worth it to try. The first 50 tickets purchased are going to get a bonus cigar, and it's from our friend Alan at EP Carrillo. And Alan, the reason there's only 50 of these is because this isn't even out yet. You managed to get your hands on 50.
I thought we discussed that it was going to be 48 because I haven't had one yet either.
You didn't?
The first 48.
I thought you didn't get one at the 100th show?
Oh, was that the Ringmaster?
That's Ringmaster.
I love that cigar.
All right,
okay,
so-
I thought that was a different one.
so,
My fault.
If you would, Alan, tell us about this cigar and what is that? When does it actually come out, and what is it?
Well, that is a great question. So when it's going to come out is up in the air. Cigar's been ready. It was ready before IPCPR in July. The problem is the box manufacturer.
Oh,
They're down in the
I hate when that
Dominican.
happens.
It actually happens a lot with cigars. That it happened with our TAA cigar release. It's now happening with Ringmaster. We could have had the cigars out months ago, but this time of year, people are making new cigars, new boxes, new parameters, and so that box manufacturer in the DR are trying to get that done.
So outside of us at the 100th show and maybe a few other people that you know personally, really nobody's had this yet, right?
Very few. Shop owners and managers across the country, they got to try it at IPCPR.
But you certainly can't go buy this yet.
Absolutely not. And I would venture to say, from the last thing I heard, we're well more than a month from it being released. So it'll be at y'all's event before it's released to the general public.
Ian, you recall this from the 100th show. What do you remember about the cigar?
It was the smokiest cigar.
That was that one.
Ever.
Yes. Oh yeah. You lit
wonderful.
that baby up. And so this should be so great for the sniff, because a cigar that has this large volume of smoke and really is going to give you a chance to get that flavor of the cigar once you light it would be perfect for then trying to pair. I think with the various and different whiskeys. Four Roses is going to be there. It's going to be a really cool event. I'm not even remembering all of the things, and I was texting earlier with Jeremiah. I think he let me know that. Let's see if there was something else he wanted me to.
I do like the
mention.
fact that earlier you said more whiskeys than you can try, and the first thing that came into my head was, have you met us? I don't.
Wait! Don't try this at home. We're actually professional.
This is a marathon, not a sprint. I don't think y'all have had Gene Beck, the whiskey redneck, on the show.
We haven't had him on the show.
So last year he tried 92
in one
whiskeys
sitting
at the social.
No, I think it was a little less than that. I think it was something like 48.
But he was doing,
but that's still a ridiculous
micro
amount.
sips,
micro sips to try it. But that's a lot of.
By the way, we did find out, and this is very exciting. Jeremiah is about 99% confirmed that B&B will have their Hudson Single Barrel Rye by the time the event takes place, and that we will have it as one of the sampleable whiskeys at the event. Yeah, so really excited about that. So the guys are already getting busy pouring whiskeys here. Let's do a little beer tasting first.
Yeah.
Though. This is Ian drove halfway across town to get this Octoberfest. So if we didn't sample this, it would be it would really be.
Yeah, if we didn't sample this, I would have to drink it.
Yeah. Well, okay. I hear where you're going, but this is Ian. Tell us about this Octoberfest.
Oh, this is Iinger.
Yep.
Oktoberfest. I don't know that there's any beers from that brewery that I don't like. I especially like their Celebrator, their Doppelbock.
Oh yes,
amazing.
the Doppelbock. Yes.
It's actually just one of my favorite beers.
Well,
and I don't think I've tried their Oktoberfest. We didn't have it last year.
No, we did not have it in last year's Oktoberfest selection. And I can tell you, just on first sip, I really like this. It's a little more carbonated than I'm used to an Oktoberfest being.
I was actually about to say the same thing.
That works
too
for
much
me,
of that.
though, yeah.
For me, it's a little too much of that. This one I've been sipping on since the beginning of the show, and it's a little warmed up, and I actually like it better because there's a little less carb and there's a little more malt front flavor with it.
I'm getting the malt, though. That's it's definitely one of the maltier.
It gets sweet malty when it gets a little warmer.
You said you didn't like the carbonation, or you did?
I do. Ian doesn't. We differ on that.
It reminds me, typically Oktoberfest is for what time of year?
Right. So they release it in July, and yes.
But those really bright, overly carbonated lagers
fall,
remind me of drinkability during the summer. So during the hot months, this is something I could totally drink outside while I mow the yard.
Right. This is not one of those.
I did that the other day.
Sort of heavier, what I call the pumpkin pie Oktoberfest.
Right.
This is not that. This is just a good.
It's not 600 calories.
Yeah, but it's a very drinkable malty beer. You know what I mean? And it's I don't know. I like the taste of this a lot.
I'm fine with it. I thought when it was a little cold, it tasted a little bit. When it was too cold, it was a little too carbonated for me, and it had a little bit too much, almost a preservative kind of edge to it. And now that it's warmed up a little bit, I'm enjoying it a lot more. There's a little less carbonation, a little more sweetness to the malts. I enjoy it here a lot better.
It does cover up the sweetness a little bit.
Yeah.
The malt does.
Yeah. Well, when it's cold, you miss some of the sweetness. You get more of the bright flavors. You don't get some of those warmer, sweeter flavors.
You almost get just a little bit of citrus in there when it's cold. I almost get a little bit of that on the tongue in the front. I'll
take your word for it. I don't remember that I just remember a lot of fizz.
Yeah. Well, and maybe it's the fizz kind of messing with your tongue. That could be it.
Sure.
But I don't know. I kind of dig it.
I'd probably put this so far out of the Oktoberfest I've had this year probably second.
Now, does that count?
St. Arnold?
St. Arnold?
That's after St. Arnold.
Yeah,
St. Arnold's just number one for me. I just love that.
But we had. So you like this better than the Oktoberfest that we had last week, which was the Marzen. It was See, I'm blanking on it now. I'll have to look back at the show notes. But
I thought so many beers.
I thought we really, really liked that.
We did
last
really
year,
like it. But
last week.
I like this. Like now that it's warmed up a little bit, this is one I'd pour in a glass and walk away from for a few minutes. Or pour in a glass before I'm done with the previous one.
And see, I'm liking it cold. Last week we had the Left Hand Brewing Octoberfest.
That was good.
And I thought you really dug that one.
I did.
Yeah, so but you like
well,
this one
just
better.
because I have room for lots of love for different beers, I don't have to exclusively love one beer.
You're
I'm poly beer.
I'm just gonna say you're a beer polygamist. I like that. Yeah,
poly brew.
I like that a lot.
Come up with a word, I don't have it.
Yeah, polybrew.
What's your favorite brewery right now?
I don't know.
That's a tough call.
One of my all-time favorites is probably Founders.
Yeah.
I love their breakfast stout.
Yeah, their breakfast stout, their porter, their old curmudgeon, their old ale is so good.
Have you had the Canadian breakfast
Yes.
stout? Yeah, you like that?
I do. But because I'm such a stout fan, I've really been on a Buffalo Bayou Brewery kick right now because of some of the stuff that
Buff is such a. I know they're a bit controversial to some, but they make one of the most efforts in trying new stuff.
Yeah.
And more often than not, their fall experiments are a hit with me. I love those. I like those rich, dark, heavy beers.
Do wonderful experiments. Yeah,
but then like they've got peach cobbler and it's like, okay, you're going a little too far. But some of
they usually have funny names for them.
Yeah.
I had on Brendan McCarran from Glenmorangie yesterday, and he had mentioned the whole craft beer movement. Brewed 3 times through old gym socks and served out of a boot. And I thought of you guys immediately. I was like, I wish these guys were here.
So if I was going to pick one of my favorite local stouts, it would be Southern Star, the Buried Hatchet.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's outstanding.
Excellent.
Outstanding.
So you had Brendan on your show yesterday?
Yeah.
So
are they coming on?
Probably. No, we don't have him scheduled on the show, although we'd love to have him. But I was just going to mention that probably at some point today you'll actually understand some of the words that he said.
Why?
Oh, because it doesn't he have the thick accent?
It's super. Yeah, for sure.
So it's like sometimes after you're talking to someone who's got that good of an accent, it's like a day later you go, oh, that was what he said.
Right.
I was just kind of like piecing it together and hoping that I knew what word that was.
We've had a few people on. I wondered if captions were needed.
I love that though. That's just so good. So people generally attribute the beginning of brewing beer to China, because that's where the first discovered
I always thought it was
evidence.
Egypt.
Well, it's neither of those places actually. It's Israel. Part of a joint project between Stanford University and the University of Haifa has archaeologists examining 3 stone mortars from a 13,000-year-old burial cave site in the country. Their analysis, which is the culmination of like 5 seasons of excavating, has confirmed that these mortars were used for brewing of wheat and barley in addition to storing food. It's the earliest evidence of cereal-based beer brewing, which puts it back about 5,000 years before the evidence from China. Not sure where the
That's
Egypt
seriously
evidence
aged beer.
You're right.
It's a little dry.
It would be a little funky, I think, at this point. Hopefully, it wasn't a juicy IPA. Those go bad pretty quick. So I just thought that was an interesting,
That's pretty awesome.
interesting thing to find out. Like the history of brewing. Like you think how far it's come. Now we have peach cobbler, imperial stouts, and
served out of boots.
Yeah.
I watched a documentary a few years back, and it was all about the history of beer, and their stance on it was beer really revolutionized
society
crops and society.
It totally did. It totally did. I don't know if anyone here watches
agriculture in
Fear
general.
the Walking Dead, but there's been an interesting plot twist this season where, in this, zombie apocalypse, the group of survivors that you're kind of following on the show actually come across this guy who was a craft brewer outside of Austin. And his whole thing is he's just all about beer. Like everybody else is worrying about zombies. He's like, oh, my still, or my pot distill or whatever it is. So, I know you're getting Chris a beer, but I thought in this segment we should probably also taste a little something.
These aren't tasters; these are drinkers.
Oh, I understand.
These are drinkers.
But I thought we should taste a little something that Chris brought, because
water?
we have a little. We have a few more than we have segments, so I thought we'd double up.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so a couple things, but taking a step back to what you said about revolutionizing society. There's considerable evidence that shows, and correct me if I'm wrong, because these things change from time to time, that the people who built the pyramids were not slaves; they were volunteers, and they were paid in beer.
They're paid in beer. I've heard that too. Yes.
I've actually heard that.
I'd work for beer. So this is Balcones. So you guys are big Texas whiskey fans. I know that you guys like to support them. These guys have been around. I think Dan Garrison over at Garrison Brothers pulled a permit first, but I think Balcones was distilling first. And it was their corn whiskey at first. But anyways, this is their new high rye bourbon. So if you tried their rye that they came out with, they use a little bit of chocolate malt in making that rye whiskey. This is their bourbon version of that. So it's got a little bit of the chocolate notes. It's also cask strength, so it's distillery only. You can't get it yet. It's not out yet, as far as I know.
So if it's high rye, what does high rye mean?
So typically when you refer to whiskey, right, everyone knows the base is what? What grain?
Is usually corn, right?
Corn, correct. So what it usually refers to the secondary grain. So if it's a wheater, that second largest portion is either wheat or rye, typically. Every once in a while, you get a few guys trying a 4-grain. That 4-grain involves all 4, but
that Hudson 4-grain is amazing.
Well, Corsair does something with quinoa. I mean, there's a few other grains out there people play with, but typically this just means it's going to have a much larger portion of rye as the secondary grain versus wheat.
Okay. Well, I'm
32% Texas rye, which is quite a bit.
Already loving this on the nose.
The color is gorgeous on this. It has a reddish color to it.
I actually thought that even before you opened the bottle. That is a beautiful color.
The nose on it, if you pull your nose back, it's got a really, really honeyed sweetness to it that the alcohol is not hitting you first, because it's 62%.
Right.
So as soon as you get a little too close, you're getting hit with the full thing.
I was going to say, close up, it reminds me of that that Navy rum that we tried of yours.
Yes, it's very thick, very syrupy, very intense, dark, rich, deep. It just tastes like really, really thick chocolate.
I love how it just, like, the oiliness of it just spreads over the entire palate. Like, it blooms in
Chris,
your
do you
mouth.
mind showing the bottle to the camera? I
Sure.
realize this is something that's available distillery only right now.
Yeah, I believe it's distillery only. You want to go ahead and pop that over there?
Yeah,
they're not a sponsor.
You go in.
there's a new Texas organization that's out called the Texas Whiskey Association. Brand new, just started. They're actually making their debut at Whiskeys of the World today, but they came on the show and we talked a little bit about this new thing that's coming out with the way that they're going to hold certain distillers to a higher standard, or more importantly, the distillers that are members of this association are going to be hold themselves to a higher. So they're going to put their own.
In other words, they're voluntarily saying, "I'm going to be a part of this group that is adhering to higher standards."
That's correct.
Right.
That's correct.
We know who won't be a part of that group.
Yeah,
Now,
quite a few people.
Now, see, I got in trouble with you guys for dissing people, and here you come on the show. You're.
I haven't said anything negative. That would be the second greatest guest you've ever had.
I'll slam Devil's River every time.
Oh, there he goes.
See, there we go.
Expect him to do
They're
it.
not in my industry.
Didn't expect him to do it.
So I took a second
This
sip
is
of this,
wonderful,
and
by
I
the way.
wasn't expecting it to
intense.
do what it did on the first sip, because usually you get it on your palate, and then by the second and third sip, you're kind of used to it. The second sip did exactly the same thing. I mean, you get a little bit in your mouth, and the flavor just—it's crazy how awesome that is.
Yeah,
It
this
just
is absolutely
blossoms
wonderful.
right there across your palate.
So it's almost 39% total in rye, which is a tremendous amount in secondary grain value, and then just a touch of barley. They only use 6%.
And can you get this at the distillery?
I believe the answer is yes.
Okay.
I don't know if they've sold out or how available it is, but they brought it by. I think it was just released. Yeah, it was bought on the 8th, so I think it's still there. If you guys go up to make it up to Waco,
That is a wonderful, wonderful bourbon. I like it a lot. Okay, on that note, we're going to take a break. We are going to come back, and we're going to do, I know Alan's such an IPA fan that we do have a Japanese IPA we want to try on the show today.
I'll try anything once, and I'll do the fun things twice.
And we also have got to talk. The elephant in the room here is Nat Sherman. So let's get to that coming up in the next segment. You are listening to Smokin' and Toastin', show number 106, and we will be right back with Alan from EP Carrillo and Chris Hart from his 9,000 different ventures that he's a part of, including Whiskey Neat. We'll be right back.
Yeah, I just grabbed some of these because we always end up eating one or two.
Yeah.
every time I drink, my nose runs. Yeah. Just a little bit. Just enough for me to need to wipe.
Dude,
Instant. I'm an instant fan.
this is
Yeah,
amazing.
that's
I didn't think you'd like it.
I'm an
Really?
instant
I'll
fan.
cry. It's like drinking chocolate.
It's
That's
so
fantastic.
heavy. Yes, of course.
Oh, absolutely.
I was telling Adam about your producer and that he doesn't drink, so it's a totally
Doesn't drink at all, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Adam is not that way.
He doesn't have those issues.
Well, when we were sitting in here, I asked him if he drank, and he was like, "Yeah, do you drink whiskey? That's my favorite spirit."
Yeah, he was at the social. You guys had fun.
You can smell the chocolate too, like just from the bottle passing.
Yeah, it was,
that is so good.
Makes me think they drop Hershey bars in there before they.
It does really give you that impression, doesn't it? Like, it's so chocolatey.
Yeah.
Wow, I love that.
Yeah.
That is cooked. That tastes like a reduction. Like you've just taken all the water out.
It certainly does, yes.
Cinnamon in there too, big time.
Spend some time with that.
Love it. All right.
See, and that's why I like St. Arnold's Octoberfest. It tastes like what an Oktoberfest.
What do
I
you
agree.
think it's supposed to
Like,
be?
as much as I like some other Oktoberfest that don't really do that, that don't have that taste.
Yeah.
Of the ones that do have that sort of fall taste to them,
This has a fall taste to it. Unmistakable.
the St. Arnold is just, it's about as good as it gets.
I would drink it year round though. If they had it year round, this would be. I don't know.
Yeah, I would too. In fact, I don't know how you make an Oktoberfest year round, but boy, I would buy this all the time. I really would.
I need to make it up to specs and buy a keg of it.
Oh, a keg would be great. What an awesome idea. All right, here we go.
Some of y'all's music is just incredible.
Welcome back. It's Smoking and Toasting, episode number 106. And we are so glad to have you guys on the show. Chris Hart, Alan Denney, our special guest this week. My name is Cruz. Ian Barry is my co-host.
That guy's
and
crazy.
On the Wheels of Steel, Mr. Adam Andrus. Welcome to the show, everybody. Wanted to mention one of our guests a couple of weeks ago, who we just absolutely adore, is Trey Boring, who's with Cigar Rights of America. Trey is also involved in the Cigar for Warriors project, and they have an event going on. I just wanted to give another plug for because it's coming up. It's Saturday, September 29th at noon at Smoke Ring in Webster. And the cigars will be provided by CLE, I believe, for that event. And they are encouraging people to come out, join them, smoke, and, of course, donate some cigars for Warriors. And then that evening at 7 p.m. in their sort of like man cave, big building that they have at 2014 4th Street in Seabrook. So if you're in the Houston, Texas area, we encourage you to get involved because, A, Trey's a great guy. B, there's just no nobler thing for a cigar smoker in my mind to be involved with than sending cigars to these guys.
I mean, if
who are
anyone
over where they
deserves a
can't
smoke,
get 'em.
it's them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So it's just such a wonderful thing to do, and I love it. I don't get involved in a lot of charity stuff other than the stuff I really agree with personally. So pet charities and that's me. That's what I'm all about.
By the way, this Texas
oh my God, we're
high rye bourbon from
during
Balcones is
during
so
the
good.
break. We were just going on and on about it. This is one of the more exciting things we've tasted, I think, here on the show in a while.
So good.
All right, I am cracking open something we have not had on the show before. It is from Kiuchi Brewery in Japan, and it is the Hitachino. I always get this wrong.
Why does it say do not drink?
Hitachino Nest DaiDai IPA. All right.
It does. It says do not drink right on the side.
There is a story. So my wife and I went away to San Antonio for a little vacation, and our producer and my stepson, Adam, and his fiance stayed at our place while we were gone.
Oh, I see.
I had some beers in the fridge, which I was saving for the
the
show,
show.
and they got do not drink stamp on them.
You were
So-
trying to, yeah. I thought it came from. I thought it was an
Right.
obscure Japanese law that
Right.
you couldn't have beer, or
Yeah.
like it was
No.
a collector's item only or something.
Because I always say,
it wouldn't be so funny, but last week he did the same thing. He had a beer, and I was like, it says do not drink.
Yeah,
on the side of it.
no, but because I always say to him, anything, help yourself to anything you want.
Sure.
So I thought if I'm going to make an exception to that, I better point it out specifically, and it's because I really wanted to
Just imagine him
to be able
opening
to
it,
try this on the show.
pouring
I thought
it,
maybe it was
and
one of
as
those-
he's
And
drinking,
then
and he's like,
seeing the
"Oh,
do not drink."
oh shit!"
I thought maybe it was one of those funky IPAs that had gone bad already.
Yeah, it's our show. You can swear on this show.
He's a
It's okay.
skull and crossbones on it.
Yeah, right. So this is a Japanese IPA, which has got to be a little different, sort of well, I would think it would be different. We may find out that it's
Interesting
not. I don't know.
nose.
Oddly enough, it smells polite.
Smells.
I don't even know how to I don't know how to.
It's got a medicinal smell to it.
I went kind of short pour on you, Alan, because
Like a
I know you're
latex
not a
glove.
huge IPA guy. So
Smells, smells like a Japanese peat.
No, it's got like a latex glove smell to it.
now that doesn't sound like a good thing.
Medicinal aesthetic.
Yeah, that doesn't necessarily sound like a good thing. Ian, the nose. What do you think? You're right.
didn't-
I get the latex glove. I
Yeah,
wouldn't.
it's like
I
a
wouldn't have-
medicinal, like a medical equipment
Mm-hmm.
smell.
Interesting. I wonder if that's the preservative in it, or is there a preservative in it?
I don't know. I mean, generally,
Because it does have a little bit. You don't
It's got
like I don't
seawater
taste
in it. It's got kind of a ocean water flavor to it.
well, I will tell you that I'm not super digging this as an
Nope.
IPA guy.
Frankly,
Not
it doesn't
digging
taste that much like an IPA.
So I will tell you that I've actually had this before. I've had it at a restaurant where I was enjoying a big bowl of pho, and it went perfectly with it, the big Vietnamese soup. But I remember liking it and thinking, oh, we should have this on the show. This is a really different take on IPA. But I'm not digging this at all.
Can I just say something that irritates the hell out of me?
What's that?
What the fact that it's spelled pho and it's pronounced pho, it's always just killed me.
I know. But see, if I say pho, I'm afraid that
They do put the mnemonic
I'm
above
being
it. So that you
insensitive to
know,
it.
right?
Doesn't
Well,
count.
then let's talk about all the different Scottish distilleries and how none of their stuff is.
Good luck with that.
Here we
all
go.
right, touche.
Yeah,
You win.
yeah. Again,
Or anything
How
Icelandic.
are you going to tell me Bruich Ladich is Brook Ladich?
I
Glenfiddich.
I lived in Boston for 8 years, and it's really interesting living in the New England area because you learn that there's just really no rhyme or reason. There's a town a little outside of Boston that's spelled Worcester, but it's pronounced Worcester. But then there's a suburb of Boston called Dorchester that is not pronounced Duster. It's pronounced Dorchester. Like there's no
Kirkendall.
rhyme or reason
Houston.
to right. Kirkendall is a perfect example. So there's no rhyme or reason to it. The only people that seem to get it right are New Orleans, and that's because they make up their own rules about pronunciation.
Well,
It's
you
just
know-
all bets are off.
You know, in
Tchoupitoulas.
Austin, if you ask somebody where Guadalupe Street is, they'll
Yeah.
look at you weird, and then you say
Yeah.
Guadalupe, and they're like, "Oh, that's right over there."
right.
Like it's really that bizarre over
yeah.
there.
Or try going to the California town of San Pedro.
I
it doesn't
honestly
exist. It's
don't
San
think
Pedro.
I like this beer. I think
Yeah.
I'm just going to go ahead and say that.
That's not good.
And I'm the IPA guy, and I don't like it either. So
But it doesn't even really taste like an IPA.
no, it really doesn't.
Like
And-
it misses IPA. I could see this going with something like if you had a bowl of pho and you do it like I do, where by the time you're done mixing everything,
Or
it's the
pho,
color of
as Chris would
lava,
right.
and it's burning your nose. I could see where you could enjoy this with it.
Well, this started really with, and Chris nailed it, the latex glove smell on the nose.
Yeah.
That's not a smell you want in your beer.
Nope.
All right.
Well,
so,
it's better than the baby diaper and Band-Aid one that we had a while back.
Or
we
the-
had one. Yeah, we definitely described it. It was a baby diaper.
or the burning paper cigar that I that I reviewed. Yeah, not
has
so
a little
good.
bit of that ashtray flavor. You know?
All right, guys. Wow, we're gonna start this and we'll move it into the next segment. So on this show, a number of weeks ago, we talked about the letter that had been sent from one of the largest tobacco companies in the world.
I hadn't actually read it.
Altria. What's that?
I hadn't actually read it.
Have you read it now?
No.
Okay, I have a copy of it here if you want one.
Yeah, I'll look at it while you
Okay.
give the backstory.
All right. So Altria is the owner of a huge amount of different cigarette lines, some smokeless tobacco, and they also own they bought outright actually Nat Sherman cigars. Nat Sherman is a very small portion of their portfolio, especially sales wise, compared to what else they sell. These guys sent a letter to the FDA
I want to point out, Nat Sherman makes good cigars.
Well, they do now. I mean, we talked about that on the show, too. For a while, their quality wasn't that great. They've put out some really great cigars across the last several years, especially.
I will point out that the first Nat Sherman I think I ever smoked was probably given to me by that man.
Well, I smoked a Nat Sherman that I bought at the Nat Sherman cigar store in New York, 10, 12, 15 years ago. And it was okay, but nothing special. And that's kind of how I looked at the whole Nat Sherman line until I want to say it was Chris that gave me one.
Thank you.
That
Proper. Okay, appreciate it. Go ahead. Just want to.
Hey, Chris, where'd you get them?
We're here. Man cave.
Yeah. Where'd you get them?
Bought them from the man cave. My buddy Alan Denney sold them to me back in the day.
I'm pretty sure you didn't buy them, sir. I'm pretty sure those were donated.
No, not the ones for TV.
This is
that was
devolving
something else.
fast.
This is the Timeless collection. The box pressed.
Wait till we get to the actual controversy.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No.
FYI, I still have one of those in my humidor.
They're great sticks, and I'm in the same boat as Cruz. I didn't think that they were just unremarkable. They weren't awful. They weren't
bad.
horrible.
Right, they weren't bad. They were just okay.
They were simply markable.
Yes.
Right, not remarkable, just markable.
There's a romance with cigars that every time you smoke, it's a experience. To sound dramatic, and all of us here can attest to having a cigar and just spending time with it, spending an hour. I spend an hour with you guys. We make a connection during that hour. Why would it be any different for a cigar?
That's right.
So you with Nat Sherman, I've made the Timeless really made an impact on me, and I finally found a love for it. So I agree. I'm with you 100%.
Well, when you gave me that Timeless and I smoked it, I remember thinking, wow, a Nat Sherman that I'm crazy about. So that's a substantial thing, because I'd had ones that were okay, but I'd never gone crazy over one. So anyway, the current legislation that has been passed but is not yet in effect has some pretty onerous regulations on the cigar industry. The kind of regulations that could put a lot of small boutique cigar makers out of business. The kind of regulations that could put a lot of the smaller cigar stores out of business.
Could ruin lives.
Genuinely
ruin lives.
Not to mention, to people who are cigar enthusiasts like ourselves, cause prices to go up ridiculously. It basically eliminates the concept of an inexpensive cigar. And there's just a number of things in this legislation that really make no sense, because it's designed primarily to try to discourage cigar smoking by underage kids.
That was the goal.
Yeah, that was the goal.
And
correct.
The FDA has already come out and said, "Oh, yeah, we realize y'all aren't marketing to kids."
Well, that's right. They've already admitted this. And Ian, we talk about this all the time. The huge government study that was done to determine.
I loved how we labeled that the Captain Obvious moment.
Yeah, right. To determine that kids don't smoke cigars. Guess what? No, they're not going and buying a $10 aging room Quattro and lighting it up at home. That's not happening.
But those cigar boxes are so hip with 9-year-olds.
They're also not.
They carry the school supplies.
They're also not paying $6.
Right.
You buy a pack of cigarettes, get 26. Right. I mean, everyone's been in that age in life where you're 17, 18 years old and you're doing math on the beer. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
yes.
Everyone loved a good Shiner Bock back in the day, but I'd rather have 48 Miller Lights than...
Yes. Or you go from the math to the alphabet, PBR. Thank you very much, right? It's just you go cheap. So so that's what the whole thing was designed for. So there's a number of senators and there's a number of cigar groups, including CRA, and different congressmen and senators who have been working towards trying to get an exemption passed that would be tied to another bill, because this bill's already passed. An exemption passed that would eliminate premium handmade cigars and the premium handmade cigar industry from this legislation, from this oversight, from this new thing from the FDA. And it was about a month or so ago, the Altria company, which owns a lot of cigarette companies and Nat Sherman and some other things, sent a letter to the FDA, which is the governing body here, where they said, we support the legislation. That's what the letter says. Now, it goes on to say, and this is what, in listening to you guys talk about this, because, Alan, you were a guest on Chris's show. You guys discussed this at length, along with our friend Jorge from Stogies. And it goes on to say, yeah, premium cigars really should be treated differently. And here's how we recommend that those things be set out. So a lot of people, including you guys, said, well, the people who were objecting to this letter that Altria sent, the people who, like us, who said, I'm not going to smoke Nat Sherman anymore. And by the way, let me correct, I never told people not to smoke Nat Sherman. I said, I can't do it anymore. I don't even remember if you said that.
I think your exact words were you hated them with all your heart and that you will never, ever even look at a box of
and
Nat
you even
Sherman
thought
again.
they might be all gingers.
Is that what I said?
That's what I thought I heard.
I mean, well, to be honest, this whole thing
There was
is,
a little fire and brimstone thing going on.
Oh,
I said I agree.
I was very passionate about it.
I'm driving back from Tulsa, Oklahoma, listening to the podcast show, and I hear this, and I had to pause it and text Chris WTF.
So actually, what happened was he was really enjoying the episode with you guys. In fact, that episode was extremely well received.
Well, this is kind of like when I come over to your house. Like I'm a lot of fun for a while.
Yeah.
And then there's that one too many.
And then people are texting each other WTF. So
he texted me. He's like, "This is a really good episode," and he texted me that right before you got to that part, and then he's
Right.
like, "Oh crap! Like crap!
right.
WTF?"
So let me just say, I understand
Don't text and drive.
a part of what you guys said,
He voice texts.
and I'm totally I totally understand this. Is a part of where you guys are coming from is you're like, oh man, we have
A friend.
a great friend
Yeah.
who works for Nat Sherman, who's a rep for them. This is gonna mess him up seriously.
Well, I don't think it'll
And I
affect his
understand
sales. I just we like the guy, and it's in today's age we're so quick to pass conviction and light up our own torch and go after somebody and
Right.
something, and it's almost you can look at it two different ways. You can look like, well, you're just saying that because he's your friend, or you could look at it like, no, the fact that he's my friend is why I'm giving this a fair, objective look.
Okay.
Just take a step back instead of jumping on that bandwagon and being so angry like so many people did. Not you guys, but
I was angry.
Well, no. What I mean is
I'm still fucking angry.
you being angry doesn't mean you're a bandwagoner who's quick to jump on stuff. You guys, you just handed me this letter. You've already read it, and your opinion, I believe, is formed from an educated one. Like I don't think you're a bandwagoner is what I'm saying. But the fact that he's a friend is
I don't know. Do bandwagoners get more balconies?
Yes.
Okay, I'm a bandwagoner.
Yeah, there you go. So the fact that he's a friend is the reason why when you had first mentioned, I was like, well, I guess. I mean, if that's what happened, then I totally understand it.
So here's my thing about it. I've read this letter about 9 times. The guidelines that Altria says they suggest, because they don't believe there should be an exemption. Instead, what the letter says is the law should remain in effect. Premium cigars should not be exempted, but they should be handled in this way. Absolutely. And then they go to, and correct me guys if you read this differently, okay? Because I want to be totally transparent on this. They then go on to say premium cigars should be looked at this way and that way, and what they lay out to me doesn't look too bad. Okay?
And that's what a lot of the industry thinks.
Right.
Too.
Which raises, man, 2 really big questions for me.
Okay.
Okay? Number 1, and this is why I can't be an apologist for Altria on this. If this is what they're suggesting, what is it in their suggestions that doesn't exist in the current regulations on cigar sales
So the biggest one,
that they feel like this needs to go into effect in order to allow?
So the biggest one in theirs is, and this is what is the industry is really up in arms about. So you've got a Nat Sherman Timeless, all right? You've got a Nicaraguan wrapper, Nicaraguan from Jalapa, and I'm making this up. I don't know if it's Jalapa or not. But then you've got binder from here, and you've got filler from these 3 countries. The FDA wants you to disclose, all right, it's Dominican XYZ and it's Nicaraguan this, and they want you to list every one of those for a blend.
Right.
And so for us, we have 24 different blends, multiple SKUs in most of those blends. You're coming into, you have to list everything out. If you could just go in and say, this cigar is premium tobacco, whether it's Nicaraguan, Honduran, doesn't matter. It's air-cured tobacco. And that's what Altria wants. And that will eliminate a lot of the fees that are included in diagnosing what the blend of every cigar is.
Okay, but that regulation doesn't exist today. That
Correct.
regulation.
I'm sorry, was this been read on air yet?
No,
letter?
again,
Not the whole letter.
I'm not going to read it in its entirety, but
No,
but
not.
the regulation you're talking about is what Altria is saying should not be put in place. That regulation doesn't exist right now, correct?
No, that regulation will come into play August 8th, 2020.
Right. When this bill that
Goes into
I
effect.
am in favor of exempting premium cigars from goes into effect. So let me go and ask my question again. What is it that Altria is saying needs to be regulated that is not regulated today prior to this bill passing?
Okay, so what Altria is actually saying needs to be regulated is cigars, and they're coming across with, you read it, some different things that they say should be regulated. What the industry, the thought process of the cigar industry is, whether it happens today, whether it happens August 8th in 2020, or it happens in 2023, cigars are going to get regulated. One way or another, it's coming, it's going to happen. Back several years ago when they had the S-chip, I don't know if y'all are familiar with that. It's a tax.
Yeah, I've heard this argument.
And so they came in and everybody said, oh my God, it's going to kill the industry. And it didn't. There was they came in, they said, okay, we're going to tax it. This is the amount. And it didn't really hurt anybody. That's what they're saying. They're saying
this bill as it exists is a disaster.
Sure,
For
agreed.
the cigar
Complete.
industry. It's
Agreed.
a disaster.
Okay, but this doesn't say that we support it as it exists. It's saying
No,
that
what it says is we support the bill, but we think you should look at it this way. So this is my second point. Can you tell me an instance where saying to the federal government, yeah, go ahead and do that, but we think you might want to do it this way? Like, we're trusting the federal government and the FDA, which knows jack about cigars. We're going to say, go ahead and pass this, and we're going to trust you to follow these guidelines that we've laid out.
I agree with you completely.
I'm not buying it. I think that's bullshit.
I agree with you completely that the federal government isn't always the best person to handle certain things.
They're never
but
the best person to handle anything.
All right,
Trying to
so
be diplomatic here.
Right. So let me make this suggestion. Yeah, I don't mean to sound like a Republican either, but that's my thing. You know. So let me just say this: if this bill is as flawed as it is for premium cigars and the premium cigar industry, why would a company that is a company I want to patronize support passing it and hope for the best? Why wouldn't the approach instead be, there's real momentum behind this exemption? In fact, new senators have signed on to this exemption as of like this week. Congressional support continues to go. Three new representatives, Andy Biggs from Arizona, Warren Davidson of Ohio, and Debbie Lasko from Arizona, are now co-sponsors. All three of these are Republicans. This is a bipartisan issue in terms of who's signed up to do it. I'm telling you, we don't need to pass it and hope for the best. What we need to do is we need to exempt premium cigars, and then we need to come back and have a discussion about if, as you say, there's going to be regulation eventually, there's no way around it. Then we need to have a discussion where there's not a hangman's noose already set up in the courtyard.
Can I interject something? I want to play
Devil's advocate.
Devil's advocate. It's something I
thought that's what I was doing.
pride myself in. So what you're saying is, and let's boil this down to two simple points of view. they're saying, look, we understand that cigars should be regulated. We support the idea of them being regulated. There's a lot of issues in the industry that need to be fixed. However, we think that this category, this section of cigars, we're not talking about old backwoods, where everyone knows you just clear them out and fill them up with other stuff.
They own Black and Mild too.
Yeah.
Yes, but they make that stance. They make the differentiation from Black and Mild.
They do.
So they go on and say, look, we own the category that this is really focused on. And this category is really focused on things like Black and Mild. It's not really meant, at least not scientifically based in any way, shape, or form. It's not really meant for premium cigars.
Wow, but
we know it's
that's
bullshit.
being so kind.
I understand that.
It kills premium cigars. This bill is a disaster for the premium cigar industry.
I understand that, but hear me out here. So the way I'm boiling this down is, look, we have a vested interest in what you're really trying to do and what you're hurting, and we understand what you're trying to do, and we support it. However, we think that this should be treated differently. That's what I'm getting from this.
Right.
And what you're saying is, although I understand that's your thing, that's not the right way to go about this. This doesn't need to be passed at all. We don't need to support it in any way, shape, or form. So to me, this looks like two differences in opinion on the same goal, but not that Nat Sherman necessarily is causing the problem.
But don't you understand the power of a major tobacco company?
Sure.
Adding their voice to saying, yes, we support this legislation.
But keep in mind, this originally thought that people thought that they were doing this simply for the sake of their cigarette business, that this was a financial
I'm still
input.
not convinced that that's not the driving
No,
force
it's not.
behind it.
And I'll tell you why. In Nat Sherman sales, an entire year, and this is, you can
Of
go
cigars.
look this up. And Nat Sherman cigars, an entire year of sales equals 3 seconds of their sales of their cigarette business.
Right. So
seconds.
that's why Nat Sherman's not really all that important to them. They don't care how much they hurt their own cigar company, and I feel bad for the Nat Sherman people who are involved in this, who don't have a voice in
But they
this.
specifically address it. It's apparently important enough. This, to me, what you're saying is it's such an insignificant part of their business.
okay,
They
so-
still wrote the letter to mention cigars.
Right.
At
Why
that
mention
point in
it if it's
time,
not that
it's like
important?
saying, hey, listen, I don't mind if you kick me in the balls, but I want you to think about it.
Right.
I want you to just think about it after you do it.
I am not advocating for the way this was written. We openly discussed on the show that this is clearly written by a lawyer. And
100%.
this never went through anyone's media department that kind of reviewed this and said, this is a bad idea.
They should have said, Michael, check this out.
So
what do
let-
you think?
So then the question is, where
right.
exactly do they stand on it? Because they haven't put out a letter that says, this is actually where we stand on it.
But
He addressed it directly.
Michael Herklotz addressed it directly. Michael Herklotz, I can't remember.
He's the face of the company.
Basically, and he is a great guy, a good friend of mine. And Michael took a couple of days, and people were burning him in effigy because he didn't come out immediately afterwards. No one from the company came out immediately afterwards, and I'm talking seconds. He took a couple of days to come out with a calculated, thought-out response. And when he did, he said, look, this is what Altria said, but realistically, they're supporting us. They bought the brand because they believe in Nat Sherman, and they don't want us to go anywhere. They don't want us to die. They don't want premium cigars to go away. But they realize that there is, in some way, shape, or form, there is going to be regulation of cigars. That is going to happen.
You know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of the program director of a radio station owned by Clear Channel, who has to release a statement about how, yeah, you know what, Clear Channel does a lot of good things. No, come on, they're the suckiest company in broadcasting.
Yeah, but you want to keep.
But you have to work for them, and you have to keep your
But that
job.
program director wanted to keep his job.
Absolutely, and
Hey,
this is the same. This is the same thing. Here's what the bottom line is.
So
guys.
mad right now.
Here's
I
what the
see
bottom
it.
line is. What is it about the current legislation, the current regulation of premium cigars
This is the most riled up I've ever seen you.
that doesn't go far enough? What is it about? I'm not talking about the bill. I'm talking about before this bill becomes law. The way it is now, where there have to be warning labels, where you can't sell to people who are under 21.
Why need
what is
new?
it about the current? What if you can explain to me why there needs to be more than this? I'll consider saying, yeah, let's put more regulation in place.
No, I'm in agreement. I think we're in agreement with you. We don't like this bill at all.
Until
this bill
then, let's
sucks.
exempt premium cigars. And if you want to talk about, hey, can you give a little and we give a little on some new legislation, I'm willing to have that conversation.
So a couple of years ago, And I want to say it was at the main election during the presidency. Right before that, there was a bill up. And there were 168 congressmen, 30-something senators, mixture, bipartisan, of, no, we need to nix this, get this out of there. Never made it out of committee. It got put into the omnibus, and it never made it out of committee. No one voted on anything, and they said, no, we got more earmarks that are more important. It never got touched.
Have you ever worked for a boring desk job at a corporation?
Yes.
So
But it's been a while.
So my day job, and it's probably, I hope no one listens to
Boring
this.
corporation? I'm
Don't
totally...
worry. No
I
one
am totally going to put... Oh.
Don't worry. No one listens
Hold
to
on,
the show. You're
I'm
fine.
Don't worry, I'm tagging everybody I know.
That's
right
what I
now.
say. No one listens to the show. No, so we, working the busy, the ant worker lifestyle that I do at times, we notice that our HR department, like once a year, it's like they run out of things to do. So they have to go back and hit all the same trigger things. We got to reform the policy, reform dress code, reform this. It seems like with politics,
They have to justify their own existence.
Yes, that's my point. For the past 20 years, there's 3 or 4 things have always been on every politician's desk every year, and it's gay marriage, abortions, smoking tobacco, oil and gas. I think this is something that is never going to go away. I agree with you completely. This bill...
This doesn't mean you stop fighting for what's right.
Agree.
Any more than you stop fighting for it in all of those other things that you talked about.
And I want to bring up something, because everybody that's out there that's listening to this show, go to CRA, go to IPCPR, CRA specifically.
They can't go to IPCPR.
Cigar Rights of America.
They can. You can go to the website.
Oh, okay, the website, yeah.
But because bloggers can join IPCPR, and it's a pack. CRA specifically, individuals can join CRA, and Glenn Loop, who does a great job with them, he's their executive director. But so there was a bill in St. Louis County, I'm talking about St. Louis, Missouri, a very large metropolitan area, that was a blanket no smoking bill. The way
So when you say that, you couldn't smoke anywhere for any reason.
Anywhere for any
It
reason.
was against the law to smoke anything, anywhere.
Except in your house. That was your home. Was the only place that you would be able to smoke.
They've been
based
trying
on
to
this bill.
prevent people from smoking in their
more
cars for a
liberal
while.
than most of California.
Yet another reason not to live in St. Louis. But
Man.
go on.
So the American Heart Association and a couple other health companies sent people out. The way the county charter was written, if you had so many percentage of the population sign a thing, a federal judge this morning ruled that bill or that voting is illegal, and made them take it off because they said that none of it was, the American Heart Association didn't do it right. The way the county charter was written didn't do it right, and they actually made them take that off. So it's not be voted on. I talked to Glenn a couple of weeks ago, getting the CRA to come in and help, and they did. And so the CRA, now that bill
CRA
is gone.
is a great organization.
And so there is the possibility that things can change. I believe we're going to get some kind of regulation on cigars, but this blanket.
But
this
why does it need to be
non-smoking-
this one and we hope for the best?
No,
this
I agree with you.
I don't understand.
we should be holding out for better.
We should be
rather
holding
than,
out for better.
Let's
That's
vote
right.
this in and
So-
go
Okay,
on.
but let me ask you this: what happens? So Altria posted this to the FDA. What happens if the FDA says, you know what, Altria, here's the big middle finger. We're going to run it through just the way it is, and then we're sitting way worse.
Except if the exemption.
Great question.
Except if the exemption passes. But what, are we giving up on the exemption? That's what needs to happen.
No, but you have to. What do you do when you get doubles on blackjack?
Yeah.
You double down.
Well, you buy insurance, right?
Well, here's what I'm saying. Why support the legislation before you know? This is what Altria did that I still don't get, unless there are other motives. Why would you say we're in favor of this legislation? But here's the way we want you to do it. Why would you not say, let us add our voice to the people who say premium cigars should be exempted? And by the way, if there needs to be legislation, let's have a conversation.
I
That's
Chris said
the
it
part I
earlier
don't
because that
understand.
letter
Or
written by an attorney.
how about we're for it if you have this exemption?
Right, but
Sure.
it doesn't say that.
And push that
Sure,
agenda.
I agree with you. Listen, I'm not saying this letter was written written the right way, written the right format.
Right.
What I'm saying is it doesn't come off to me as them trying to sell out the premium cigar side. Because if you just replace the word premium cigars with Nat Sherman, it says, I'm okay with you regulating Nat Sherman differently from other cigars so long as the differences are science and evidence-based and FDA applies objective
Right.
criteria to it. So to me, it
I
comes
don't-
off as...
I don't disagree with that at all. What I disagree with is the first part where they
Sure.
go, we're in favor of this legislation. That's it. John Kerry lost a presidential election because of this phrase. I was against the legislation. I was for the legislation before I was against it. That's what this sounds like. We're for it, but we're not really for it.
Okay.
Come on, Altria, you can do better than that.
And I'm okay with
why are
you-
So
for
hold
it?
on, let's back down just a second and look at the crux of what we're talking about too. Altria handed Nat Sherman a big turd.
They sure
Like,
did.
They really did.
They sure
and it's
did.
not Nat Sherman's fault.
No, it's not
No.
Nat
But
Sherman's
the
fault.
fact that Altria owns Nat Sherman, they should be tending their herd, so to speak.
They should
Well,
be.
they may be out of their... I agree with you.
They're out of their
But there's a
element.
lot
But they're out of
more
their element.
A
I mean,
lot
the guy
more
that
sheep
wrote-
in their herd than Nat Sherman, though, and that's why.
The guy that wrote this was their vice president of regulatory affairs. Do you think this guy smokes cigars?
No.
Let me ask you this: would this guy that you know, who's the head of Nat Sherman, would he have ever written something like this?
No, he wouldn't have.
Of course not.
No, as a matter of fact-
because he actually supports
Sure.
the premium cigar industry. So
It's so sad.
why are we
because-
holding Altria to a lesser standard?
Well, I don't think we're holding him to a lesser standard. I think, again, it doesn't come off that way to me. If there's a problem in, let's say, there's not a problem with cigars, we acknowledge that. We're all in agreement. We think that the way it's branded, the way the warning labels are on it, the way it's priced, we're not worried about young smokers. But Altria does have to worry about young smokers for literally 99% of their
They own
business.
Marlboro. Yes,
Right?
they do.
Right.
So with all the heat,
Right.
so they're okay with saying, look, we're okay with you addressing this section of our business.
But that's not what they said. What they
That is
said
what they said.
was, we don't support the premium cigar exemption. Why?
They said they don't support
Why?
the premium cigar.
That's what this is. They are not in favor of premium cigars being exempted.
That's not what I
From
They
this
never said
legislation.
that. They never said that. They said they were in favor of the regulation. They never said that they were not in favor of an exemption.
Well, then
We're
that's
splitting hairs.
Then
We're
that's a
splitting hairs.
very
Now we're getting into lawyer speak.
yeah.
exactly.
Well, and it's written that way. I mean, I didn't know if they said that they're not in favor of the exemption, then I'm with you.
That's the equivalent of what they said.
But
What
they never
s-
said that specifically.
All right.
I know we're splitting hairs on it,
All right,
but they never did
we
say that.
got to take a break, and this
was
segment
great, by the way.
This is almost approaching a 100th show segment length. So we're going to take a break, and look, can I just say this Balcones high? This is great bourbon. This is terrific. I love this. This is the kind of thing. See, this is what I like about cigar shops, like where you get to sit around with people who
Sure.
and you just talk about it, but what you
Yeah,
have in
chew the
common
bit.
is cigars. I love this. We'll be right back with I guess what will be our final segment of Smoking and Toasting on number 106.
Ever
Thank
before we're
you.
assassinated by Altria.
So apparently Lisette is watching the show.
Oh, really?
Because I got an email saying, "Be careful what you say on the show."
Yeah. And this is on
And this
Facebook
is
Live right
live
now.
still.
Yeah,
So
no,
she-
I don't want to get you guys.
Oh, I'm not.
I'm not going to get in
what
trouble.
So
I don't
I'm
give a
actually-
shit.
So on the next segment, I'm fixing to bring something up that's
Controversial?
That's
don't
very
get
controversial.
don't get yourself fired, buddy.
I am not going to mention company names.
Okay.
But this is pretty fucking controversial.
By the way, Cruz, I love the side of you, man.
So
Let's see.
It's
you might have a
passionate,
pen.
isn't it?
It's super passionate.
So you might have a pen
Adam, you should have one over there.
You don't come prepared.
because
That's weird.
I don't.
So-
That's
but
not number one fan material.
well, here's the thing. I can't say these, but I can write them down and Chris
Oh,
can
shit.
say them.
Oh, I'll say that. Now this part's not going on the podcast, but it is going
But
in
it is
video
going,
form.
yeah,
It
it's
is
going to
video
video form,
right
and it'll
now.
be on the video
I can hear you
cast.
flying
Yeah.
right
Well, right now, I think
Oh, that's fucked up.
Yeah. Never mind. Won't
Never
say
mind.
it.
Don't write anything.
We say nothing.
Yeah.
No, nothing. Stand by.
So,
Final segment here.
A quick thing. What is this one?
So it's 1876. They're San Antonio, It's their straight bourbon aged in port casks. I have no idea, and John, their I don't know if he's their GM or I have to look on his card. He's one of the owners, but his title is like general manager or something. He said they aged them anywhere from 4 to 6 months, just depending on where they felt it was correct. I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
All right, let's do our final segment here.
I want to try this, by the way. You smacked my hand earlier.
Oh, did I?
Well,
No, I did.
Oh, you did. Sure.
Here we go.
It's an oak bomb.
Welcome back. It's Smoking and Toasting. Okay, so let me just say this to, first of all, we're brought to you by B&B Butchers and Restaurant, where they, you don't get political. They just serve great food and great drinks.
We actually don't
They do
know
not
if they
support anything
this
said
or
in
not.
1840, the opinions expressed on Smoking and Toasting
vary greatly from our own.
They're at 1814 Washington Ave in Houston, and in the shops at Clear Fork and Fort Worth. They are also the location of the Whiskey Sniff. So come out. We'll talk politics. We'll talk whiskey. We'll talk cigars. It'll be a great deal of fun. Now, I want to say that the reason that Alan and Chris are in contention for like the most times ever appearing on the show is because you guys you're like our favorite guests. So
I thought it was just because we're the best looking people.
Well, it's that. Yes, it's that. But because I want to make sure I don't piss you off too bad, maybe before we start the final segment, I should break out some. Let me tell you about the river, and I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. The river Kokytus. It's a cold and dismal place in Dante's Inferno. It's a treacherous body of water and ice that surrounds Hades and has trapped thousands of souls. While the imagery might seem dark for a beer name, those familiar with the Martin House Brewing Company's previous barrel-aged release, Acheron, will surely know what to expect. Kokytus is a 13.8% ABV Imperial Stout.
Look
I
at
love it
Ian.
already.
I just got Ian's attention right now.
Yeah, I saw that.
They aged the brew for 7 months in rye whiskey barrels to balance out the intense barrel flavor. Cacao nibs were added. The beer is not to be taken lightly. It said the river is the main resting place for traitors and wrongdoers and people who support
Sounds like my mother-in-law.
and people who support inappropriate cigar regulations. One thing's for sure: do not turn your back on Kokytus. And so what they do, rather than offer it in a bomber, they offer it in this box. And can I show that to the camera? With some pretty intense artwork there. They offer it in this box with 2 cans, which they say is more beer than a bomber. So
I just want to tell you what I heard was blah 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 13%, and then I heard the rest of what you said.
And then
Would you
I
like
just
me to
tuned you out for a while. No, I'm just joking.
it's like that joke
you
about
like me to-
dogs, what they hear, right. What a dog hears. Yeah.
I'll be happy to pour that for you.
Oh,
Wait. Are you calling me a dog?
no, not at all.
Well, that's fair enough.
So did you try the last couple from the series?
'Cause it ain't no
Sea
use.
Winch?
Oh,
Unfortunately, I did try the sea winch. The sea winch was
I was going off
terrific.
Chris
I
Cornell
didn't
and
like it.
everybody
I'm not
there.
a Goes fan.
Yeah, no,
I don't think I'm a Goes beer fan.
We had the Sea Witch on here, right?
I thought it was great.
Mark,
Yeah,
I
it
love
came
the
in.
sea
It came in the
winch.
2 box. Yeah,
Woo.
it came in the 2 boxes as well. So
wow.
all right,
Smoky,
so,
malty.
Yeah. So talk to me about the Kokytus.
and goes
Wow.
really well with the whiskey.
Yeah.
Yeah, this would be good
Holy
with a
cow.
pulled pork sandwich.
This would be and let's talk
It
cigars
almost
for a
is a
minute.
pulled pork sandwich.
Let's talk cigars for a minute. How would this match up with, say, a Nat Sherman Timeless?
Actually, this
Is that a treacherous remark about
No.
the box?
No, this is so
funny.
This is where traders go.
It was really an attempt at humor. So.
I don't know about y'all, but when I pair a cigar with beer or whiskey,
I have a tough time with beer pairings of cigars, I will admit, and
Okay.
I love beer.
stouts and porters pair
Yep, stouts
better,
and porters
of
much
course.
better. Yeah.
But I will tell you, the darker the beer, the darker the whiskey, the lighter the cigar I like.
Generally,
because they offset. So if you've ever tried it, the Nat Sherman 1930.
It's
Amazing
like product
cigar.
placement on the show.
Hey, it is what
I'm
it is.
just-
Michael Herklotz, I love you, baby.
I'm just teasing you guys.
Everyone's speakers just went, ah!
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Sorry.
They're 1930. It's really a nice light. I honestly don't know the blend. I don't think it's a Connecticut, but it's just a nice light, mild. I really love it at breakfast. It would go great with this. It would go great with this.
I'm kind of with you on that because I like a lot of cigars that have some of the darker, chocolatier kind of profiles and pepperier profiles. but they don't always go well with dark beers.
Correct.
So
Correct.
what I've found is almost everything goes with Octoberfest.
Because it's so crisp.
No, you're right.
Especially
Agreed.
the St. Arnold.
It's
like,
crisp.
and that's
It's crisp,
funny, but it's
got
true.
the malt and the body to it.
But
to support.
but if you're doing a dark beer, generally something with a lighter wrapper overall, that's not going to have quite as many of those chocolatey, darker fruit profile.
They start
in
to
it.
clash.
Right.
They start to
or
clash.
they run over each other,
Right.
and you don't get the subtleties of them. So I
Right.
think that sometimes things that go together are okay, but having opposites that you can really taste through each other.
Now there is
A better
one
pairing.
brand out there, I will say, that the way they make their cigars and the way their blender blends cigars, it doesn't matter what you drink. If you're smoking an EP Carrillo, it's absolutely amazing with whatever you're eating and
Now,
whatever
see,
you're
That's the
drinking.
product placement.
But you know what? I'm totally fine with this one.
I will tell you on our 100th episode, you laid that inch on me, and that thing was amazing. Like,
I
it was
hope
so
we're talking about a
smoky,
cigar.
aren't we?
Careful what you say on the show. There,
Hey,
Wait, which podcast am I on?
Yeah, Whiskey Neat, we can say a lot of weird stuff.
Yeah.
No, and
But that one, like that particular profile, even as big and smoky as that cigar was, what I remember most about it is everything we tried went well with it, and it was just something about that particular cigar profile. It allowed all those flavors to come through almost unaltered, you know.
yeah. So one of the things about that cigar, it's a Nicaraguan Puro. And a lot of people, they think Nicaraguan, especially Nicaraguan Puro, they think heavy spice, it's
Yeah.
going to be harsh. And not all Nicaraguans are like that. Only the Nicaraguan Puros that have a lot of Esteli, because that's where the spice comes from,
Yeah,
because of
that's
the
where the
soil.
spice-
Well, and there's a lot of cigars that are labeled Esteli
Yeah.
specifically, so you know you're getting.
So you
that,
know
too.
you're getting something. And there's a couple of them out there they're very spicy. So that one's a Nicaraguan Puro. It actually uses the same wrapper from Encore. I don't know if I gave y'all one of those, but I will definitely get them to you. I know Chris has smoked it several times.
Oh yeah.
It uses a Nicaraguan Habano. It's a nice, you look at it, you almost think Connecticut. And then it uses a bunch of jalapa in it. So it's not
like
that
the- I
super
like the flavors
spicy.
of jalapa, yeah.
It's medium bodied, medium flavored, and it just got super highly rated by Cigar Aficionado in the new issue that came out.
Alan, we talked about this in reference to Nat Sherman, that they made cigars that were okay, pretty good, and then they took like a real step forward
Sure,
they did.
in recent years. I could really kind of make the same comment about EP Carrillo.
I've made that comment.
So
I've made that comment a
have
few times.
Totally stepped it up. What can you?
Yeah, I can.
Explain what happened.
All right, so a couple of years ago, we got number 2 cigar of the year with La Historia.
I remember
which
that.
was-
Yes, which was big.
That's our
Great cigar,
flagship
yeah.
cigar.
Great
It's a
cigar.
beautiful cigar. The
I
problem
just
is,
picked up another box. It's in my truck right now.
man, it's great. And
Come into
you know,
your car before we leave.
I I know Lisette's going to say something to me about this, but our downfall with our cigars was the banding. You had Cardinal,
yes.
you had Cardinal Maduro, Cardinal Natural. You had Core Maduro, Core Natural, and then you had our New Wave Connecticut. The bands looked almost the same.
See, I love your banding now.
Now it's amazing.
Yes.
But you would 2-3 years ago, you would pick up a cigar. I don't know if I want this, and you didn't know what box to put it back into because all the bands look the same, all the boxes look the same except for color, and the color was differentiated by you had black and red, red and red, red and black, red and white, white and black. You didn't know where to put the band back to.
Right.
Well, imagine
Well,
the
there's-
confusion
there
involved.
is-
Exactly.
Because
There
if-
is
if you-
something to be said for cohesion in the marketing.
Correct.
But sometimes it's a little too far, and I have to assume that if you're a marketing person, sometimes you get a little too close to the product, and you go, well, it's obviously different because it's one shade lighter blue.
You're right.
You know, or something like that. That's a little extreme, but
The big confusion is if someone had a bad cigar after a good, let's say you go get an AP Carrillo a couple years ago and it's delicious. Then you go back for a second one and you actually pull up a different one because you think it's the same one and you didn't like that one.
Right.
Then you think there's a consistency issue.
Yep.
Right.
And then the next time you
Then
come
you
back,
think it's Camacho.
you think it's that.
Right.
Oh, you think that's the one I didn't like before. So
Yeah.
you just so then you hurt sales for the entire brand.
Sure.
So the Historia now, the Encore.
Yeah,
I mean,
so,
dude.
Ernesto, I'm going to tell you, Encore, I have always, when I went to work for EP Carrillo, when I knew the man cave was going under, I wanted to say some nasty, dirty things, but when I knew the man cave was going under,
By the way,
Yeah,
you're
I
welcome
wanna
to say
say-
whatever you want to say.
Man.
you can. But I will tell you this: we enjoyed our time with you at the Man
We
Cave.
did. It was very
tremendously.
cool.
hey, I worked for them for a long time. Y'all don't even, We'll talk about that after the show.
Okay.
Anyway, so I love DP Carrillo and love Trey, who was the rep before. And when I went to work for them, I didn't just want to go to work for a company that made great cigars. I wanted to go to work for a good owner.
Right.
I knew Ernesto. I knew his daughter Lisette, done events with both of them. They've both been in the shop. I've known both of them for years. It was a great mix. I had a great time, and I love who I work for. But we had problems with packaging and with banding, and that's fixed. And now the stuff that Ernesto...
We only have a few minutes left in the show. So before we do and kind of like try to maybe put a bow on that somehow, I would like for maybe Chris to... Guys, you tell me if you want to do this, or I can save this for next week for Ian and me, and we can have something that you brought, Chris. I brought an Aultmore Speyside 12-year.
That sounds delicious, sure.
Do you want to try that?
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds terrible.
So I'll break that out.
Speyside.
So while you're doing that, I'm gonna bring up a little something.
Okay.
So everybody, the day the letter came out from Nat Sherman, I'm walking into a shop in College Station.
Yeah.
Called Hideaway Humidor. And Colton is sitting there, and Brandon Luna, the Nat Sherman rep for Texas, is sitting on the couch.
Who's a friend.
It was a dear friend.
Absolutely.
He's sitting on a conference call with other reps, Michael Herklotz, because they're trying to figure out what the heck is going on. But so that's all going on. But here's something a lot of people don't realize. There's a lot of large cigar conglomerates out there.
If you guys want to pour this into something you already have, or I have some cups here. So,
and
yes, there are a lot of cigar conglomerates out there.
So one of those cigar conglomerates, who I'm actually very good friends with the owner of this company, when they got bought out by a parent company, they left the CRA. They don't have anything to do with the way things are working. They're in complete acceptance of the way things are.
Okay.
And there's several of those.
When you say the way things are, you mean the way things are now, or
sure, they're fine with exemptions.
The pending legislation.
They're fine with the pending legislation.
Okay.
Because here's what happens: if the pending legislation, the way it sits, goes into effect the way it sits,
that's honey all day.
We lose some of the best boutiques that are out there.
Well, this is
because
what
they can't afford to stay in
This
business.
is what has got me
all riled up.
If you talk about me being all riled up about this, this is what's got me all riled up.
So there's some
I don't like when things are tilted towards the man.
Agreed.
At the expense of the young upstarts or the people who, because it's those guys, by the way, who are pushing the industry.
Changing the zeitgeist.
Wait a minute, hold on.
The things that are happening now at historic brands like Monte Cristo and Romeo and Julieta and even Macanudo, the things that are happening at those brands now that are exciting and really moving the cigar industry forward are because of what happened at the little guys across the last 10 years.
Yeah, and here is the problem. So let's say you've got $20,000, and
let's say that. Yes,
I'm following you out to the parking lot.
That's a good thing. Yeah.
So
I'll buy some of Chris's cigars. We'll go smoke.
Right. So you got $20,000, and you can call up a plethora of factories between the DR, Honduras, and Nicaragua, and now you've got the cruise.
Right.
All right. And so
that's my plan, by the way.
You've got $16,000, and you say, well, I can't buy as many, but I'll go to Honduras, and now I've got the Ian. Anybody that's got a little bit of money can go out and make their own cigar line. I'm sitting in one of the premier shops in Houston yesterday, and this guy walks in. He's got a little metal case with a piece of paper in it. The piece of paper, when I looked at it, I was like, that looks like a list of company or cigar shops. And he walks in and says he's with XYZ Cigar. I'm not going to mention the name of them. And so the owner, who's a good friend of mine, and he owns a bunch of shops here in Houston. And he was like, oh, okay, well, what's your cigar? And he tells him, well, where's it made? Honduras. Who blends it? I don't know. What's the name of the factory? I'm not sure. Okay, tell me about the cigar. Well, it's... The guy couldn't tell him anything. He was like, all right, are you doing any deals? Which in the cigar industry, it's known as a 3-in-1. You buy 5 boxes, I'll give you one free, stuff like that.
Right.
The guy's like, oh, we've never talked about that. This guy knew nothing about cigars, nothing about the industry. He went out, he probably spent $50,000, bought a crap ton of cigars. Now he's got a little distribution here in Houston, and he's selling cigars out of there.
Do you know the guy's name?
Huh?
You
I'm not going to.
Yeah, I don't want you to put it on there, but can you? I want to know who, because I think I know who you're talking about.
I doubt it.
You think so?
Yeah, I doubt it. We'll talk about it after the show.
Yeah.
But that actually hurts the industry because you have.
Sure, of course it does.
There's no regulation on this guy. This guy could have rolled the cigars in his backyard, but when you can't tell us the blender or what factory they're coming out of, that throws up so many red flags for shop owners.
That comes down to the shop owner too.
Of course, and
going,
the guy was like,
"That seems like a bad idea."
All right, but
exactly.
Fine. But if you're trying to lay that out as a reason why the premium cigars should not be exempted from the current legislation, it's kind of like saying, if we don't tax gasoline, people will drive more, and someone might get into a wreck and die.
Sounds
great.
I agree with you.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's. I agree with everything you're saying, but this isn't the way to go about it. And so before we get too much further, let me just read you something here. A secluded site once known for smugglers and illicit stills, the foggy moss conceals the water source and filters it through gorse and heather, purifying it to the profit of Aultmore's refined character. I just loved that paragraph. Interested in what you think about the whiskey.
Okay, so in the industry we call that bullshit.
Yes, but thank you.
Yeah, no,
it is very romantic bullshit.
It was wonderful romantic bullshit.
It's a Speyside whiskey, and it's honey for days. It tastes very happy with it. It's sweet. It's light. The heather, that comment is very it's got this very bright, young youthfulness to it. It's 12 years, right?
Yeah, so it's 12 years. Yeah.
So it's got like a little bit. I'm interested to see what the proof is. Is it 80 or 82?
I am looking. Stand by.
Right behind you. I see it over here.
It is 46% alcohol.
Yeah, so it's got a little bit more bump in it, and you can pick up more on those deeper honey notes because of that. I think it's great. I'm happy with it.
Yeah.
You know what I like about it? I like the mineral taste in it too. There's a very mineral kind of presence to maybe it was in the water or whatever
interesting.
it is.
After having the bourbon earlier, which is so dense and thick with flavor, this is almost like a refreshing whiskey by comparison.
Sure.
It's almost easier drinking.
Sure, it's
even
much
though
lighter,
it's the single
brighter.
malt. But there's things that I just love about both of those. Both of those profiles. To me, this is almost like a sip it in the afternoon on the porch kind of a single malt. You know? Whereas that's more like, I just had a really amazing dinner. I'm now going to smoke a cigar and really enjoy the complexity of this.
Yeah,
you know?
It's a difference between a digestif and an aperitif.
Right.
Yeah.
That's well said. Well said. All right, so let's see if we can put a bow on this. And I really appreciate you guys coming on the show.
I really appreciate you guys having us.
Talking about this and talking it through with me. And Ian and I have been, just kind of sitting back looking at this saying, what the hell? Why would Altria issue a statement on this that wasn't saying, hey, listen, premium cigars need to be exempted from this. Let's go back to the drawing board. If the admission is that there's going to be some regulation, why would they issue something in support of the legislation? Because anytime, I'll go back to what I said earlier, anytime you're counting on the government going, go ahead, tax us, we trust you to be fair.
Well, taxes can go up and down. Remember when they went down?
No.
I do. No, wait. Yeah. That's kind of.
Well,
Hey, George Bush gave me a tax break.
To answer your question, I think for any of us to propose why they did this would be complete conjecture. I think their intentions were to address both sides of the tobacco law. Both there's for anyone to say they definitely were not addressing their cigarette side is ignorant of the fact that that's where they get their money from. I think their intention was to basically say that we're fine with regulation as long as you treat this differently. That's what I pulled from it. Their wording wasn't great, admittedly. This whole letter is 12 pages of jargon that the average consumer is not going to be able to grasp, let alone...
I noticed you're now using it as a coaster.
Yeah, a coaster, and I doodled some things.
Movies on
By the way,
it,
which is about what it's good for.
Let me
opinion.
ask y'all a question real quick. Y'all record on Thursdays, correct?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
Record and Facebook Live on Thursdays. So.
okay, so October 11th,
The day after the whiskey sniff, tickets are on sale now.
day after the whiskey
Thank you,
sniff.
Chris.
It is also 2 days before Stogie's Wingding.
Before the Wingding, yes,
Okay.
it's a big deal.
So it is. And the nice thing about that is a lot of the dealer principals are in town.
Including Nat Sherman. Get them on.
Nat Sherman.
Would love to have them on.
Direct from the horse's mouth.
If you don't have anybody scheduled, let me make some phone calls.
If I have someone there, I'll move them.
Okay.
To
Let me, and I may not be able to get Michael, but maybe I can get one of the other big dealer principals in the industry who is way more familiar with regulation than I am. Maybe Jonathan Drew or
Right.
Robert Caldwell.
Listen, here's the thing. I didn't say I can't smoke Nat Sherman because I wanted to punish Nat Sherman. No, I mean that. No, like because I don't know Brandon the way you guys know him, but I have no issues with the Nat Sherman Cigar Company.
Sure.
But just like I have no issues with, 94.5 The Buzz in Houston, I have issues with the company that owns them.
That's fair. That's
you know?
fair.
I agree.
But that doesn't mean that I felt like it was important to take a stand and say this was not the right way to put this out there. You don't take the weight of a giant of the industry, which is what Altria is, and throw it behind this legislation as it exists.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's the bottom line.
And I can't fault you for that, by
And
the way.
I will agree with you that what they then outline doesn't really sound all that bad to me. But that's trusting the government to do it, and I don't trust the government to do it.
After you've
And
already
at all.
given them,
and I'm a Democrat.
after you've already given them permission to not do it, you're saying, "Could you
have to
please
go.
do this?" I don't know.
I actually have to go, but I don't
This
care
is-
what you are.
See, this
I'm
is
more libertarian than anything.
yeah, and so am I, by the way. But
Anti-gun.
but
all the-
No. I love guns. You should be able to do what you want. You're
Yeah,
a tax-paying
yeah.
and responsible
Yeah.
citizen. I don't care.
you should be able to shoot people that say
I agree.
I don't support the no.
I've been here for an hour and haven't said a single thing about Beto.
And that's good.
I'm not familiar.
because we'd be here for another several hours.
Yeah.
If you had. But I digress. Look. The bottom line though is this, guys, and this is what I love about cigars. Okay, cigars, and we've talked about this before many times. We talked about this at the Man Cave, the show that you were on. How cigars take people, Democrats, Republicans,
It doesn't
people.
matter.
It doesn't
Doesn't
matter.
matter.
You're enjoying cigars. You're talking about what you have in common and
That's it.
how enjoyable
That's
this. And that's what I love. That's what I love about this whole thing. And that's what I don't want to see. I don't want to see the little guys get pushed out of this. I don't. And that's why I feel like working as hard as we can to get premium cigars exempted from this legislation. That's why I feel like it's so important. And I feel like what Altria did not help the effort.
was a massive mistake.
It did not help the effort. And that's my bottom line. And so if I'm choosing not to smoke Nat Sherman cigars because I'm pissed off about that, I don't think that's that strong of a reaction, really. I'll tell you, I could really enjoy a Timeless right now. I'll be honest with you. But
and
that's
I'm
what-
gonna, complete honesty, there were people that were burning them in effigy. There were people clearing some of their stuff out. There were people will never order from you again.
I understand why, but I will say that I don't think the Nat Sherman guys. I don't hold it against Nat Sherman. I hold it against their parent company.
Sure.
Yeah.
A lot of it was knee jerk.
Yeah, I think so. So is there anything we can agree on here?
No, I actually, I understand. I think if anything, what we've done today is clarify why we're upset and the difference of point of view. Whereas initially we thought we were hurting them because of a misunderstanding, but now we've understood this. We understand the situation in full, and we just disagree with the way it was handled, and that's okay. Like we're not in agreement, but I also understand why you're upset, and it doesn't bother me. And here's the thing: it doesn't bother me either way. You can hate him for whatever reason you want.
Well, and again, I don't,
because you guys kind of surprised me with it on the show, and
it's not about
you
hate.
were like, let's talk this out.
It's not about hate. It's about we should be in this together.
Sure,
we should be. You're a tobacco manufacturer. We are people who are supporting the right for others to use your products. Let's find places where we can move this all forward together, not places where we're on opposite sides of a similar issue with each other. Don't you think? I mean, I hate to be Rodney King, but can't we all just get along?
Well, not only
There's
that,
already
but,
too much smog as it is.
If you're going to put out something like that, you should be concise and stick to your guns on it. I mean,
right.
You can't go say, hey, government, we're going to go ahead and support what you do, but we'd really like for you to think of this, because the government doesn't back down from anything.
Yeah,
like the government's
that's
whole,
right.
If you ask me, and you can put this wherever it fits in your lifestyle, every part of the government exists to justify its own existence. You put something into the government, it doesn't want to get back out. It's real hard to...
Yeah, nobody wants to lose their gig.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so same thing happens with bills. You put something in there, and it's there.
So
and then you have to create this whole momentum to undo it, which a lot of times is not worth it, because it's just one of those situations where you're putting your faith in the government's hands to be your nanny state and take care of you. Why should the government take care of me?
Well, this has been easily the most political and politically charged episode ever of Smoking and Toasting, but I want to thank our guests, Alan Denney, EP Carrillo. We love what you guys are doing. We love your cigars. And
appreciate it.
And Chris Hart, I mean, honestly.
I love you guys endlessly.
You're family. I mean, honestly, and we love your show. Whiskey Neat, give the...
Did you guys listen to that episode with Nat Sherman?
Oh, absolutely I did, yes.
Were you screaming at the screen the whole time?
I was yelling at you, yes. I was yelling at you.
So I would love
this
to...
Lily Bell.
I know...
No, it was great. I loved it.
Chris doesn't have the availability to do this with Whiskey Neat yet. I know y'all do. I'd love to do an episode at Stogies.
We would love to as well. In fact, we have just brought the folks at Stogies, and Jorge are involved with us in the Whiskey Sniff. They are teaming up with Oliva to make sure that the Oliva cigars are.
And I hear you got Wade
there.
Woodard coming on at some point.
Wade Woodard is going to be on next week, as a matter of fact. Yeah, so
Nice.
we're really excited about that. But no, Jorge and Stogies, we consider them to be, and I loved listening to Jorge on your show, Chris.
He was great.
We think they're the great
He
guys.
was so great.
And
I love
we do want to do a show at Stogies, and let's if you guys want to help nudge Jorge in that direction.
You tell me when you want to do it.
All right.
No. You tell me when you want to do it, and I'll
Really?
I'll tell.
Well, which one of you's been on the
No,
show?
wait,
more
I'll
times?
tell you guys when
Hold
you
on.
want to do it.
I'm fixing to get his membership at Stogies canceled.
Oh, whoa! I got some things I want to tell Lisette you wrote down here.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Let me just say, guys, we've had an amazing single malt and an amazing Texas bourbon on the show today, and that's and not to mention, by the way, this crazy ass Kokytus.
Super weird.
It is.
Awesome.
Kokytus, yeah, that was just way over the top. So what a show it's been. We got to have you guys on all the time.
I appreciate it, guys. I mean, we sped through it. It's been an hour and a half.
Ian, just before we close out, any final thoughts from you? I know with so many voices in here, I just don't feel like I've heard from you as much as I
Actually,
normally
frankly, you said pretty much everything we were talking about.
He underlined a bunch of what you said.
We've talked a lot about it, and that's why I just kind of stayed out a little bit.
I think, though, we should talk more about it, and so I'm going to recommend that we go and have a cigar and maybe some whiskey.
You are on, sir.
Yeah, all right, good. Thank you, everyone, for enduring this show and for being a part of what this whole thing is about, which is getting together, discussing things, talking about our love for great cigars and great spirits and great beer, and that's what we're. That's why we do this.
Cheers, guys.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
guys.
Have a great weekend.
And thank you guys for being two of the most generous people in the entire industry.
We love it.
Yeah, you can come on the show anytime. You keep bringing this stuff.
All right, I have to go, but first things first. Who farted during that?
God, that was bad.
Someone farted. Okay. Because at one moment, it was this side of my face.
And he looked at me.
I thought it was you.
No.